Today we are tackling a topic that is called Transformation for Traditional Banks, Exploring African Success Stories. I'm going to be joining you while you're having such a good time sitting. I'm going to sit as well. Good having you with us. Let's get right into it this morning. And to those of you who can see me but can definitely hear me, make sure to make those notes of those questions, and then we'll ask those questions of our panel a little bit later on. Sivan, I'm going to start with you, sitting on the far side there. Good morning. Can you share some experiences with us how your bank has successfully adapted to this new digital landscape?
Sure, Brad. Good morning to my fellow panelists. So I think just looking at the digital landscape, we've spoken a lot about what's happening from a technology perspective. As a design director at Absa, I tend to bring the customer lens to most things that we look at from a customer or business problem. So just looking at what's happening for customers right now, we know it's been for a long time, but the mobile phone is the epicenter of their universe. Customers are, however, completely overwhelmed by information. What's also happening is, in South Africa specifically, we're getting smartphone penetration happening quite rapidly. This is with the introduction of, kind of low-grade smartphones now available from as little as 1,000 Rand. So smartphones, mobile is the center of the world, information overload. But what that really means from a customer need perspective is that customers are just craving simplicity and security. Simplicity in everything that they do, particularly in banking, which is highly complex and very intimidating for many customers. I think it was Lorato that spoke about, the number of unbanked customers that we have in South Africa, and it's a lot lower than many other African neighbors. But we also have millions of underbanked people, people who, they have a bank account, but they don't use it. They get their salary or their wages into the bank account. They deposit, they withdraw it all in cash, and that's how they transact for the rest of the month. So those are that's what's happening in the landscape from a customer perspective. And I'll tell you two nice stories of what we've been doing at Absa, both kind of very recent launches. So the first one is a product that's very close to my heart. I'm very passionate about Absa Chat Wallet. We launched this product in February this year. What Chat Wallet is Absa's answer to financial inclusion, and it's a wallet that is built entirely on WhatsApp. So a customer can now actually access a store of value entirely on WhatsApp without having to ever go near a traditional banking channel. And the idea behind that is that, rather than trying to force and bring customers to us, potentially in channels that they're not comfortable or familiar with, let's go to them. So we know that we've got very high penetration of WhatsApp. Customers are using it every day. It's familiar. They use, they love, they enjoy, they trust. So can we bring them banking through that channel? So Absa Chat Wallet, you can open the account in under a minute and then do your essential banking services entirely in WhatsApp. We're very proud of that. I think one of the lessons that we learned there, and this is why I'm saying it's very close to my heart, was the value of customer and colleague testing throughout that process. We spent over 100 hours with customers testing that product from design to delivery. And since launch, we've seen an average of 144% uplift in our digital sales numbers, which is really great in less than 6 months. The other quick one that I want to share is we recently launched Absa Pay, which was a partnership with Ozo. And I guess why this one is very significant for us is it's the first time we've actually exposed our banking services to a third party. It's our first step into the world of open banking. Absa Pay is, again, customers craving simplicity and security in online payments. So it just enables online payments to happen much faster. What was happening previously was full screen scraping. So customers were giving basically their digital banking credentials away, which we absolutely don't want to have, and customers are being exposed to these unknown risks. So we've simplified that a lot. We've made it a lot more secure. And lesson learned there, I can't remember which of the previous speakers spoke about that, but the magic of a partnership between a traditional bank and a fintech was just unbelievable, like absolute synchronicity. We've just both have, unique strengths that we bring to the table, but it enabled us to get to market with much more speed and scale that we would have alone. So that's a nice success story.
Yeah, thanks, Sivan. Now, we've got 3 African nations represented, South Africa, Lesotho, and Zimbabwe. And I'd love to hear something from your side, Sam. What has your experience been, although you're in a bank that is coming from South Africa? What's the experience been on your side?
Yeah, thanks, Brett. So in the Lesotho context, First of all, we introduced your typical cell phone banking running on the USSD rails. And through that, our customers were able to get basic services being payments, transfers, prepaid, history. And then later we introduced the FNB banking app with the similar features. But to it, we added stuff like statements, bank confirmation letters, cross-border payments as well. And at the later stage, we also introduced agency banking. And this, we introduced it to address financial inclusion. Because then we realized that we cannot continue to grow in a brick and mortar. So the best choice is for us to partner with the SMEs in those remote areas to make sure that they deliver our banking services to our customers. And the lesson learned there is that in all of these, customers will use technology as long as it solves their needs. You know, the concept around some being more tech savvy than others, I saw it in the times of Triple M. The elderly joined that thing because they knew there was money to make out of it. And that actually changed the whole picture and the perception I used to have of whether the elderly can actually use these channels or not. So it was a paradigm shift altogether.
What can you add there for us, Ken, with a Zimbabwean context?
Thank you. So I think the story is pretty much similar in the sense that you start from an MNO entering the market, and they are offering these services. So as a bank, you then start with mobile banking. So we started from that point of view, but over time we then developed an app. We call it AFC Link, and on this app you have an omni-channel, experience. What you see when you get onto the internet, when you get onto, phone banking and so forth, is pretty much the same. What we have seen is that there is, clients find it very difficult to open bank accounts. The frustration with going into a bank and being asked for KYC documentation led us to think outside the box, and we launched a product which we call DigiPay. And what DigiPay does is it's a wallet. We have integrated with the central registry, so you're able to just under 2-3 minutes, you're able to go in there, you dial *276#, you open an account, and off you go. So we found that this account is appealing a lot more to the low end of the market. But even so, the top end of the market also find it convenient where you want to just want to send money to your uncle or so who lives far away in the remote areas. So we found DigiPay being of appeal, in the market. But I also want to just say that beyond what we are doing, we are also seeing quite an emergency of fintechs that are looking at this space. One of the, it's not a typical fintech per se, but you have a group of fast food restaurants who started by just looking at the challenges that they were having with change. So they created loyalty, tokens, and over time they started gathering this data and provided an app, and now they are one of the leading, money transfer, agencies in the country. And because they've got the real estate where they've got over 400 sites, they are really eating the market of the banks. So we can see that the fintechs, are really a big challenge, but not to look at them as a challenge per se, but to say, what are the opportunities that they can give us for us to work together with them.
I'm going to stay with you for a moment longer, Ken. What are those the drivers of the disruptions that you are seeing in the banking industry today? What are those disruptors that you can identify most readily?
I think the emergence of fintechs taking a bit of our revenue is one of the disruptors. I think there's also the view that the changing demographics, where you have the millennials, AMA 2000, like we call them, who have very different views about banking, who want banking at the comfort of their homes and so forth. This is driving the need to ensure that you transfer the service from being in a branch, but being at the fingertips of the client that you want to serve. Also, as we look at the emergence of these digital techies, you then have to say, how do you utilize them to best effect? Often when you look internally, you are trying to ensure that you reduce the cost of delivery to the client. You're trying to say, how do you minimize the headcount that you have within an institution, and you try and reduce your cost base. But equally important is to look and say, how do you deliver this product to the customer the way that they want it at the least cost possible?
Sam, how do you think banks can leverage these disruptors?
Top of mind, Sivan said it. Partnership with fintechs, it's a way to go, because currently the fintechs are enjoying a very lenient regulatory landscape as opposed to your traditional banks. And that is why they're able to expand as fast as they do. This reminds me when I was rolling out agency banking in Lesotho. We call it Cash Plus. I think we introduced it in 2018. 2019, we had only about 8 agents in the whole year. 2020, we moved to 24, and then later 60, and then 120. But the fintechs that came after us, in the first year, they already had 1,000 agents. And I was like, how is this even possible? Then I remembered the regulatory landscape when it comes to those guys is much more lenient than a typical banking industry. And that is why now, instead of seeing the fintechs as a threat, we should actually start making them our friends, because then they're able to tap into those new markets that we are not able to tap into at the present moment. And secondly, their infrastructure is not as complex and as expensive as our legacy systems.
Sivan, you're seeing this whole journey from a completely different perspective. It's almost like you're sitting behind it all with ones and zeros and all sorts of things the majority of us don't understand, and seeing these things develop. How is this transition going to be smooth? What needs to take place, do you think, compared to more traditional banking methods to try and see a smooth transition of this stuff?
I think Anthony touched a little bit on kind of the ideal process for digital transformation. There's a gentleman that I follow from Singularity University who talks about purpose, principles, and practice. That kind of sticks with me, and I like the framework. So purpose is obviously defining your vision. What are you actually trying to achieve with the whole transformation thing? And you're going to have multiple purposes. You're not going to have one, necessarily one giant purpose that covers all things. You'll have different purposes in different areas. I'm a big fan of principles, design principles, or customer experience principles, whatever you might want to call it, because I just find that the road is going to get murky somewhere along the way, and if you've got those principles to help you with decision making, it's very useful. And then your practices, your best practices, your playbooks, your ideal processes, how you're going to make those the kind of on the ground implementation smoother. I do want to add, though, that actually I can talk about from a massive organization like Absa. On the ground, it's really not as kind of very nice and linearly packed as purpose, principles, and practice. It's quite messy and it's quite unstructured when you're doing it in your day-to-day. I actually think the most important thing to do first is a shift in mindset. This whole concept of unlearn old ways to make room for new ways. Traditional banks are kind of notorious for but we've always done it this way, or we did this once in 2017, but it didn't work, so therefore we can never do it again. But in 2017, you might have not had some of the enablers that you've got today. So we're doing a couple of things from an Absa perspective to create that change in mindset. The first thing is that, customer and colleague centricity, and we don't only talk about customers as our end users. Our colleagues are equally as important, and we're here to make their day-to-day jobs and lives a lot easier. So customer and colleague centricity is part of our group strategy, but more than that, it's not like a slide on a deck. In the day-to-day, it's not as hard to convince people why we should be solving for customer and colleague problems anymore. People are bought into that, which just creates a lot more efficiency in the process. I think a previous speaker also touched on the concept of resilience. I'm quite big on that one. Creating an environment of psychological safety for your teams is very important if you want to have innovation in your organization. You know, for every 100 ideas that someone pitches, 99% of them are probably going to get shut down, but you don't want them to live in people's minds. You need them to be shared, and you know, you need co-creation and collaboration and a space of safety that people can share those ideas so that the good ones and the right ones can be elevated into products. And yeah, I guess the last one is the proof is in the pudding. So, you know, Chat Wallet is a really nice example. It started as a design idea built off the kind of methodology of design thinking, putting the customer at the heart of everything we do. And, you know, our executive leadership bought into this concept. They loved what it had to offer and how it was going to solve this problem for customers and business, opening us up to new markets. And then they invested in it. You know, so that's really important, because you can't say bring innovation, bring customer centricity, bring a new way of thinking, but no one's putting money behind those new ways. And I think that's what we're doing quite nicely at Absa at the moment.
Thanks, Sivan. You are nodding in agreement there, Sam. I'm not sure if you've got something you wanted to add there as well from the F&B perspective and that smooth transition and getting over those obstacles.
Yeah, and that same transition that we're talking about, I think Sivan mentioned it quite well. It needs executive buy-in. And one of the previous speakers mentioned something about having the CIO, the CFO, and the CEO on the same table to agree on these things. Because then if you don't get them all on board, you're not going to lend them. The CFO will be talking about the cost, the CIO will be talking about the benefit, and now the CEO has to be the mediator here to say, okay, are we going this way or not? You know. So if you don't get that one right, you are sure not to see that happening. So one thing that you have to make sure is that it's also decentralized all the way down to the lowest level within the organization. That means you need to invest in training, make sure that the staff are well versed to use this new technology that you want to bring in. There's proper change management, partnership with your L&D departments and the likes to make sure that they are comfortable to service the customers. And as you do that, you also need to make check of customer service. Are customers being impacted negatively or positively by this new change that you're bringing? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't make sense to bring in digital transformation that is going to put the customers worst off. At the end of it all, the customer must be put first, which is customer centricity that Sivan is speaking to. Yeah.
Ken, would you like to add to that?
Yes, thank you. So I believe the starting point is having clarity around the vision. What is it? Why are you in it? In the transformation, journey. So there should be that clarity. And in terms of the strategy, there should be a digital strategy that aligns with the business strategy. And in the process, you are able to say, what's the benefit? What's the return on the investment that's being put into it? But equally important is to be able to go through a change process. And the change involves both internal and external stakeholders. Internal, your staff have to understand why the change is coming through. What are the implications? Are there any threats to their existence in the organizations? And external to say, what are the benefits that this will bring to the customers that we have? But you also have to get feedback. You have to monitor and get the feedback and review and revise and reform, what you are doing so that it sits well with the customer. Because at the end of the day, you are doing this for the benefit of the customers.
I know that we're talking different businesses here. Not everyone is from the exact same institution. But what are your thoughts, Sivan, around collaboration? I'm just thinking about the way that you create things, and I guess it becomes about competition, who can get there first. But wouldn't there be any benefit in some kind of collaboration of technology and ideas? What do you think about that?
Are you talking about internal or external collaboration?
I think it would be external.
External.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I do think that there is benefit. We all have different, as I was talking about with the collaboration or the partnerships with fintechs. I think it works the same in a competitor environment. Everyone does actually have different strengths. if you look at our customer or our consumer base in South Africa at the moment, I think it's something like 70 to 80% of them are actually multi-banked. It's very rare that a customer has a relationship with one bank and one bank only. So it leaves you with the question of what could actually happen if we had to come together to create a more holistic, competitive value proposition as a kind of, like the GNU, So I definitely think that there's a lot of power in that. Obviously, we've seen internal collaboration have a lot of success, so I don't see why it couldn't from an external perspective.
Sam, some thoughts?
So I'm going to pick on the thoughts of Stephen in the previous panel. He mentioned something about why are the banks still charging each other interchange? Why can't they just drop it and then the customer gets cheaper banking? And that's the level of collaboration that I think I see happening in as far as the banking industry is concerned. But of course, it's not that easy because these platforms have been built and somebody's making money out of them. So it's about time, say the central bank or the regulator says, okay, let's let go of this and start giving, some of these services for free. Because if they don't do that, I mean, the cost of regulation right now, it's way too high. Right now, the costs of the bank are more on regulatory projects, more than anything. And I understand where the regulator is coming from. With the increase in cybercrime and so much at stake, just ourselves in Lesotho in November, we got hit. I don't know how many of you heard of that. We got hit by a ransomware, and it hit our central bank, not even a commercial bank. Of course, there was no damage, nothing happened, but that whole thing paralyzed the banking industry for about a month. There are some people who didn't go home for Christmas because they were still settling payments manually. That's how serious that thing went. So while we understand that the regulators are increasing the cost of regulation for us, it's only until it hits you that you start appreciating the efforts that they're trying to put. So we were lucky that nothing happened, but I know how difficult it was for all businesses were impacted, everybody, even government at that time, because we have just launched a national payment switch, and the breach was into the same switch that had less than a year in function. So yeah, we need to appreciate such efforts as well.
You're looking at me as if I've fallen out from another planet here.
Yeah, so I'll just share with you the journey that we went through. So we had developed this app, AFC Link, and we were integrating, billers, merchants, and you name it. And the process was very slow. So what we then did was we went out into the market and we found a player that had over 60, merchants and so forth, that we were able to just in one go, hook up. So we have a revenue sharing arrangement, but what it has done is that we have looked at this collaboration giving us the reach in a short space of time that otherwise wouldn't have been able, to achieve. Another example is, a loan processing system that we got on board. Again, it's a collaborative effort with the fintech that had developed this app, and we are able now to have most of our clients who are in the civil service, they are able to apply for consumer loans in under 5 minutes, and the result is, known and funds are credited into their account. So instead of looking at fintechs as opposition, we have embraced them. We've said, how do we share revenue and get the value of their development into applications which we may not have gone into?
Yes,
Can
I
I add
wanted
a
to add,
thought
of course,
there?
please.
Sorry, I just thought of another example. I worked on the launch of PayShap. When was that? Last year, I think March last year. And I mean, that was a pivotal industry collaboration. You can't launch a new rapid payment technology as one bank. So we needed a couple of banks to be first to market. And there were multiple sessions. It was really, so productive, so effective. We shared a lot of, we were each of the banks was doing a lot of customer testing, tech testing, and then sharing the insights that they were finding along the way. So we had a lot of industry collaboration there, and as a result, we had a very successful launch. And I think that was a testament to how we could come together to have impact.
Yeah, I like that. Let's open up to some questions. I'm not sure. I'm going to stand up so I can see the rest of the floor. Is there anybody who's got a question for the panel? I want to make sure we've got enough time to get all those questions in. No one got a pressing question at the moment? Okay, that's fine. We can move on here on our side. What are some of the, let's continue with you, Ken, since we last heard from you here on this side. What are some of the opportunities for traditional banks in the future as you forecasting and looking ahead? What are some of the things that come to mind as the biggest opportunities, the next almost obvious step that needs to be taken to embrace what's happening?
Well, I think when you look at banking now with so many branches that we have, I think there's need to embrace, these new technologies in a manner that we are able to bring down the cost of delivery. So the traditional branch perhaps will not totally evaporate, but the form and nature of it is going to be somewhat different. Where we are seeing even the most basic, service being offered in a branch, I think going into the future, we are going to see much sleeker branches where we are selling higher value-added services in the branches, and the more mundane kind of transactions are done electronically. So I think an interaction around creating a will or an insurance discussion, that will remain in the branch. But getting cash, opening an account, transferring, most of those services will find themselves, out of the branch network.
Yeah.
I just want to add to Ken's thought. I was in the States last year, and I was in Miami, and I was walking down the street, and I saw a very nice-looking coffee shop. And I thought, sure, that's a nice coffee shop. Maybe I'll stop and have a coffee. And as I was about to walk in, I saw it was a Capital One bank branch, completely different to our branches here. Like literally a coffee shop with tables, customers and colleagues, just basically having coffee chats or conversations in a very informal environment. And it was really quite refreshing to see, talking about Bank of the Future.
Yeah.
And in our case, we have started expanding with mini or flash branches. That's what Ken is saying. We are no longer expanding using your channel to ensure that their delivery is bespoke and timely as well.
I think when you look at what's happening in banking, there is a very big risk that as he talked about the ransomware that hit Lesotho over December. I was reading this morning about the statistics from the South African Bureau of Risk, and they were talking of year 2022 numbers, where South Africa lost 740 million rand through cybercrime. So this is one of the real threats that we have to deal with, and I think it's no understatement that the major investment that we are going to have to do as banks is creating a secure environment. More so when we have APIs and integrations taking place with third parties, there's going to be a hell lot of investment that's going to be required in this space.
Thank you so much. Before we greet the panelists, any questions that you've got? I'm seeing one in the middle here. If we can get a microphone here to the middle, thank you so much.
Thanks. So it's great to hear African success stories, but we shouldn't be seen as drinking our own Kool-Aid. So are there any global success stories that you can share that we possibly can learn from as African banks? Thanks.
You want to start this side?
Well, I will just talk of, I was in Netherlands sometime last year, and I was trying to get my son to open an account, and we had quite a difficult time because there are not so many branches, and the ATMs is where you can do most of the transactions on. So I think the development or the story for the branch setup is moved quite a lot in the developed world. And I'm sure that it's a matter of time that we catch up in Africa. I think Africa is unique in a way that we have got the rural and urban, dwellings, and there's also disparities in terms of access to connectivity, and this will take some time, but ultimately we are going to see a thinning out of physical branches and more of digital footprint.
Anyone want to add onto that?
Yeah, I was reading one article a month or so back, and here the author was talking about what could actually happen if Apple decided to get a banking license, looking at the customer base that they have. And somebody said they can wake up being the biggest bank in the world if they so decide. That is, we need to start shifting our thinking to say, if what started as payments solutioning could actually move to become a bank, then what are we waiting for? I always admire Time Bank, for instance. When it landed, it was a cool thing because to me I was like, hey, how are these guys going to lend a bank without, brick and mortar? But they did it. So it says to us, how are we going forward to make sure that we leverage and adapt to the increasing changes in technology as well as the customer preferences? Somebody spoke about the millennials who wants to do everything on the run. That is very much true. And the last time I stepped into the branch, I can't remember myself because I like it here in my phone. Thanks.
I'm going to add a slightly different perspective. I think we should drink a lot of our Kool-Aid because, I've been overseas quite a bit to different conferences. I look overseas all the time for inspiration, for ideas of things that are happening. And our banking systems are some of the most advanced in the world here in Africa. In the States, it still takes 2 hours in a branch and about 50 printed pages to open a bank account. So, I can only say from our recent wallet experience, under a minute on a cell phone, on WhatsApp, not having to touch a traditional banking channel is pretty impressive. And when I shared that use case with some colleagues that I had, or people that I met at a conference last year, that they were absolutely blown away. What? You're doing this in Africa? So I think we should drink more of our Kool-Aid because we're doing pretty well.
Thanks so much. A question here. Thank you.
Thank you. I think my question to the panel is how are we driving digital adoption of these new innovative solutions, and how are customers receptive to these innovative solutions? Yes, you've launched a solution to make payments faster, but are customers adopting these initiatives and services that we've launched?
You want to answer that one for us, Ken?
Yeah, I'll have a go at it. So I think the new solutions that are coming through should be first and foremost be focused on the customer, the ease of use of the product, the cost which must come down, and it must be available anytime, 24/7. So you will find that once you address the value proposition in terms of what the customer is looking at, it's much easier to sell. But I think convenience and cost are key major, decision points.
Simplicity. Dr. Lance mentioned something about keeping complex stuff in the back end and giving it as simple as possible to the customer. Now, couple that with customer education, then you'll always get it right. You are sure they are going to adapt because now they start seeing the value to it. And I think one of the speakers spoke about customers being loyal to what adds value to their life. I think it was Chris, I forgot the name. Yeah. So as long as we make sure that we show them the value that they can get out of this platform, then they are sure to adapt.
Just to add a last thought building on what you're saying, the reality is that these new products don't sell themselves, and the highest accolade is word of mouth, like is someone willing to attach their name to your product? So I think apart from education and building trust, which are absolutely imperative, it's also about unlocking networks and communities, because the best way to scale and to get that digital adoption is if, my mom uses the product, my sister uses the product, and so it's easy to make it part of our community lives, So that's another thought.
Thank you so much. Any more questions? Is that it, ladies and gentlemen? A round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much. To Ken, to Sam, and to Sivan, thank you so much. You can just pop your microphones down there.